And welcome back to the Mad Sopranos Men Show. We're your hosts, Chris Brodhead and Michael Dennis. In this show, we take a look at the two greatest shows of all time, Mad Men and The Sopranos, and we're taking a look at some of the broader topics and themes and character developments that we see in the show, one episode at a time. So, if you're looking for something that's a scene by scene breakdown, that's not really what we do here. Like I said, we're looking at the broader topics and the broader issues and the greater storytelling aspects. And in this week's episode, we're going to be checking out season 5 of episode 1 from both seasons. On The Sopranos, it's going to be the infamous college episode. And over on Mad Men, we're looking at 5G. So, Chris, Happy New Year. Welcome back. How's the New Year treating you so far?
So far so good. Had a bit of a nightmare travel day, January 3rd. We showed up 2 hours early to the airport. We should have showed up 4 hours early to the airport, apparently.
Yeah.
We never travel with bags you need to check. We're always just, cruising right on the plane with our carry-ons, but we're moving to Spain, so that demanded we take a little more stuff with us, so
You couldn't fit everything in your backpack.
Dude, after that travel day, I was like, no amount of clothes or shoes are worth this. Like, I'm throwing it away. Like, I wanna just put it in the trash and just walk onto the plane instead of missing the plane.
Yeah.
This is the dumbest fucking thing. What are we doing?
I sat here from the comfort of my Northern Kentucky living room all through the holidays and just like my entire news feed on Instagram, especially like the accounts I follow like that are Florida related. It's just video after video of the airports at like 5:30 in the morning already just completely packed. Like the
Yeah.
time I wouldn't even you would think you'd be leaving at 5:30 to get there, around 6. That's gives you more than enough time for your flight 2.5 hours later. And it was not the case at all. I was just looking at this like, God, what an absolute mess. What a retarded mess.
Oh, and so we switched from the Tampa flight leaving at 10 AM to the Orlando flight leaving at 11, and we still almost missed that one.
Oh my
And
God.
my wife, Erica, was in such a like, we were fine. We didn't need to rush, but she thought we needed to rush, and she freaked out in security, took her laptop out of her brand new MacBook Air that I paid for, put it in security, went through security, grabbed her bag and her backpack and her carry-on, and no laptop and ran to the plane. And then 5 minutes before takeoff, she's like, "Oh my god, I left my laptop at security." And I was like, "Okay." And I went
Oh
up
my
like, "Hey,
God.
can I go grab the laptop real quick?" They're like, "No, we're pulling out right now." So, we may have, that may have been the, sacrificial laptop there.
It's just gone.
We put in, like, a notice on TSA and LAX, and they're like, "Oh, this happens all the time. I'm sure you get it back." And I'm like, I'll believe it when we see it."
No, no, what comes to my mind right now is when, Big Lebowski asked the cops if they're gonna catch the guy who stole his car. They're like, "Yeah, man, we got 2 crews working on it right now."
You're working in shifts.
Yeah, it's just done. It's over.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, if you're gonna, miss a flight or whatever, just chill. Don't freak out. Freaking out just makes everything worse, and then you get to get kicked in the sack and lose a $1,300 laptop.
Yeah. At the very least, if you miss the flight, you still have all your stuff.
Yeah,
No.
you still have your $1,300 laptop.
Oh my god, that sucks so bad, dude. I've been sitting there thinking like, is there any way I can make some sort of statement that would get me off this plane to get that laptop, but also not put me in like a federal holding cell for 12 hours? Is
Yeah.
what borderline ominous thing could I say to buy me 5 minutes off this plane that wouldn't put me in prison?
That's if any of our listeners out there, know the answer, please put it in
Yeah,
the comments.
yeah, and please add in the comments if if anything comes to mind. But that on that note, let's slide right into our 2 episodes this week. When we last talked about episode 4 a couple weeks back of The Sopranos, we talked about especially how boring we thought that episode was, and the episode of Mammon was pretty slow too. But with this episode of College on The Sopranos, this is really one of the bigger episodes of the series. In every single top top 10 article that I or video YouTube video or anything I ever come across. This is one of the highlights of the franchise in a lot of people's eyes. It is not in mine, and we can get to that. But Chris, overall, what did you think of these two? Because I don't get me wrong, I like College. I think it's a really good episode, and I like 5G. But I don't quite put it on Rushmore like most people do.
Yeah. I mean, I know that we're essentially comparing apples and oranges here, but you
Yes,
know,
but you can compare two fruits.
they're both sweet and about the size of a baseball.
And they have their fruits and they have skin. So yes, we can compare these.
You know, I wanna I don't want people to be like, "Oh, you fucking dick," like, they're not the same, but, like, we're comparing them, you know, they're great
Yeah.
TV shows, they're similar enough. I think that there's so many rough edges in Sopranos, and
Mhm.
Mad Men is just a fucking well-oiled machine from the first frame.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy this episode, but to me, it played more like a low budget, gangster independent movie.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not slick, it's not smooth, it's rough around the edges, like, when Tony kills that guy, it's like I'm like, "I've shot something that looks like that before."
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. And there's a big deal about it, with the history of College. And it's funny you mentioned that because I was listening to the Michael Imperioli, Steve Sharippa podcast, and they were talking about how, this is an episode it could almost be a mini movie. Everything's very self-contained. There's no Uncle Junior, there's no Livia, there's not really anything that happens outside of the A and B storylines here. A being Tony and Meadow up in visiting their colleges, and then Carmela and the priest back at home. So, everything is contained. But I find the two storylines clunky. I also I also don't care about the priest. I don't I was happy at the end of season 1 when we kind of put the priest storyline away and we never go back to it. And I'm not saying I'm happy that Nancy Marchand, the lady who plays Livia, dies before season 3. I'm not happy that lady's dead, but I'm glad Livia wasn't there to be a character anymore because I've
Mhm.
just had enough of them. I've had enough. And supposedly you go through stuff that David Chase talks about how they had more stuff for the priest, and they also like the plot of season 3 was going to be Livia taking the stand against Tony in his indictment, which I think is the death of the series. The second this series starts becoming a courtroom drama, like I'm now it's Law and Order. Now I really don't care. And we
Mhm.
have a little bit of courtroom drama in Junior at season 4, but that's not what this was going to be. So I just don't care about the priest. And I think I think this episode is indicative of kind of the larger problems I have with Carmela as a character. Is just that we spend kind of 3 or 4 seasons with her wrestling with the fact that she's a mob wife and thus the highest paid whore on the show. And just her coming to terms with being the highest paid whore on the show and being fine with being the highest paid whore in town.
Mhm.
And this episode is a microcosm of those that issue and that kind of, I don't know, lack of development or just lack of on my part.
Yeah. I'm with it.
So,
Yeah.
take a look at some. Go ahead.
It's funny you say that, you know, me and my wife are, you know, watching Sopranos just of our own recognizance. And we just watched season 3, episode 1. And I'm like, why does his mom look so weird? Like, why does her face look like a different lighting scheme than her body?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, she died before this season started. And they just had
Yeah.
to did like the crow style, like end her character.
Yeah. Yeah, they had to get, like, one scene out of her,
Yeah.
and that was one of, like, the first times I think Hollywood ever did that, like, put a face on somebody else,
Mhm.
which now we can all do from our phones in, like, 3 seconds, and it looks 10,000 times better than what The Sopranos produced in 2001.
Yeah.
Um, but, yeah, it's that's a good point you bring up. But I want let's hop into uh some comparisons here. We have our ABC plots. Over on The Sopranos, we have Tony and Meadow. Over on Mad Men, we have Don and his brother. So both of these episodes are very family centric. I had forgotten that this was the one where his brother first shows up,
Mhm.
and when the episode started, I totally forgot about it until the janitor the janitor arrives to check in on the most handsome and well-to-do man in New York. Over on our B plots, I noticed that our B plots both involve a book. The B plot over on The Sopranos is about the Bible, with Carmela and the priest, and over on Mad Men, it's Ken's book that kicks
Mm.
everything off, and uh, Pete, Pete whoring
And
out his
it
wife.
is Ken's book the Bible of Mad Men?
Who's to say what was Matthew Weiner trying to tell us with that? But
What
I
wasn't there a theory that, we were watching, like, Ken's memoir or something before Mad Men ended?
yeah, I do remember that, and I
Yeah.
remember that theory also being tied into the opening credits, that it was gonna end with Don killing himself by jumping out the window and meeting the credits, so yeah, that it was all gonna be Ken's book. Uh,
Yeah,
that would've been dumb.
that would've been fun. Yeah,
Would've been real dumb.
there's nothing building up to him. Like, he never looked over a ledge and was like, "Hmm, that looks nice."
Yeah, yeah, there's, like, 2 scenes of him, like, looking out the window.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's not like they even spent the time foreshadowing it.
yeah.
And Don likes pussy too much anyway. He was never gonna kill himself. He's too good looking. He was just he wasn't gonna he was never gonna do that. I think that would've been really out of character.
He just changed his name and moved 2 towns over and started again.
Yeah, he would've just hit reset again.
Yeah,
Like, that wouldn't have been the path that he took. I remember
yeah.
reading a couple places people talking about the final season of Sopranos and last couple episodes, this was gonna end with Tony turning to save himself from New York and, like, the mob war that was coming, and that's not in his character either. Like, there's nothing in 7 straight years that makes you think Tony would ever flip to save anyone, like,
Mm,
much less himself.
mhm.
I don't see that in there at all. Um, but, both of these episodes, another big similarity, we have a man from both of our main characters' pasts returning to give us
Ooh.
new information and also kind of put our characters in a new spot. We
And
got
they
Febby up in New
both
York.
die by strangulation.
Yeah, yeah, they both good call. Yeah. Yeah. They both get it in the same way, but they both get to the same place in the same way. Just they just took a little bit different routes.
I mean, yeah, Don, for all intents and purposes, did that to Adam, just
Yeah,
like Tony did it to whatever his name is.
to Febby.
Yeah,
Febby.
yeah.
Um, what did you think of because that the scene's pretty famous in Sopranos where Meadow and Tony are in the car and she asks him if he's in the mafia. Because I think the performance they both give is really good. And the girl who plays
That was
Meadow,
that was the most interesting part of the series up to this moment, I felt. I was like, "Okay, now we are entering new territory
mm,
in mob, you know, cinema history." Like,
yeah,
I've never seen this in Goodfellas or Godfather or Casino or any movie or TV show up to this point where, like, he's having, like, a frank, open, honest discussion about, like, what he does
mhm.
with his daughter.
That's interesting you mentioned Godfather because I was thinking the other day about kind of the characters and just how they all play out. And you can make the case that Michael's wife, I forget her name in Godfather, but she's played by Diane Keaton.
Mhm.
That's you know, he went back and chose her because he knew for the most part she would just be like a passive woman who just sat back and just accepted everything that he did. And that kind of bears true. And yeah, she kind of rebukes everything at the end of 2, but she's still in it. And I don't know, I just thought something was there that this is the character that he came back to America years after murdering the Salazzo guys, And then she's just still there, kind of waiting for him.
Mm.
And so he's like, I'll marry her. Like, she's not going to get in my way. And at no point, never, in any of these shows in the past, have the family ever really gotten in the way, or even, like you said, had a frank confrontation with the mob boss character. So to
Mhm.
finally get that in a real direct way, and I do love Tony and just his myriad of reactions, just because, he's like, "No, who told you that? Everyone assumes because you're in the garbage industry that you're mobbed up." And then after like 2 seconds, he's like, "Well, what does your brother know?" Like, he's just tacitly accepting it and acknowledging that it's true.
Well, I think that's the genius of Sopranos is it takes all the tropes and all like the tough guy, take no shit attitude that we love about the mafia genre, and then gives us the perspective of like an innocent, well-to-do family that is just like, "Oh, fuck, I thought we were normal."
Yeah.
And we get to, experience Tony or the mob boss, like, explain it, like, to justify it to this, like, genuinely caring, listener.
Yeah, when they're talking in the restaurant and he's like, "Maybe if I had just tried something different, I could have ended up selling patio furniture out on Route 22," or Tony actually reveals that he wasn't given much of an option. And you can go back and watch the prequel movie, and that's kind of the case. Um, but yeah, he's not really given an option here. And in some ways, like Tony was never given an option for the mob and just kind of moved right into it because that's who he was. And Don's brother, well, he was just always going to be a janitor. And Don got a way out. He got to go to war, and then someone he got lucky and someone died in front of him. He got to just gobble that guy up and got his way out. But these other characters never really had a way out, What else? What else? What's Don's brother's name? I'm drawing a blank right now.
Adam Adam.
Adam. Adam, that's it. Adam.
Mhm.
What you what'd you think about Pete's whoring out his wife?
Oh
Which
my
I that's
god,
that was
dude. Yeah, that was, a new low, though much expected from old Pete.
that's a level of scumbaggery it's hard to bring Pete back from. And I think there was a part of me that, like I mentioned before, that I thought Pete was gonna be written off and be done in the end of season one, just like Uncle Junior was, and we never make it to the end with either one of those characters. And I was clearly wrong, but I mean, we spent an entire episode with Pete's family and seeing how horrible they were and how nice his wife's family is and how genuinely caring she is. But man, this whoring out of his wife was is and how he treats Trudy throughout the series, I think is really despicable.
Mhm. I mean, I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Pete to achieve this level of success in this environment, like there's nothing sacred or nothing that he won't do or leverage or there's no lines here for him
Yeah.
to achieve his aims. And
And you're
how
right.
far is
And you're
how
right, 'cause
s-
that plays out when he gets, Don's box of information and blackmails him
yeah,
later. Like,
yeah.
there's no line here.
And it's so stupid. It's just to keep up with the Joneses. Like having a story published makes no difference in his career. Like that doesn't help him find clients to create ads for. like, like this is such a little thing. The more we're learning about Pete, from the outside, Don is everything that every, warm-blooded American wants to be, but he's a complete sham. Like he created it all up to this point. And then Pete is supposed to be like, "Oh, well, he's the real deal." And then we find out like he's a snake whose family actually has no money as well.
Yeah.
He just like every character is a facade in this story.
Yeah, even Roger,
Yeah.
big time. because his only job is basically to keep um Lucky Strike.
Yeah,
That is his only client up until they lose Lucky Strike. And
yeah.
then when they lose Lucky Strike, he doesn't even tell anybody for like a month. And then he if you remember, like, then he pretends to go and do a pitch to win them back, but he just goes to a hotel and drinks by himself and
Mhm,
calls Joan and tells her that he didn't do anything. And when Lee Garner Jr. tells him, he's like, "You didn't do anything to earn this account. You inherited it from your dad."
mhm.
And Roger's a fun-loving guy and a charismatic guy, but he's a fraud. I would argue maybe the one character maybe we don't know much about him who's not would be Cooper. Would be Burt Cooper.
Mhm.
He
Who
seems like
does
the real
nothing,
deal. What's that?
who never does any work.
No, no, but you can at least make the case that you know he did all the work to build the company, and now he literally is just the figurehead that most older men are. So at least
Mhm.
that comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Um, but all these other people, they're all wearing multiple masks. Oh, that reminds me, a great quote in this episode. Hold on, let me go find it. That applies to both of these. When Tony goes to the last college and he's in that hallway, and he looks up and he sees that sign: "No man can wear one face to himself and another to the multitude without finally getting bewildered as to which may be true." Is that about Don Draper? Is that about Tony Soprano? It's the same exact
Is that about
thing.
Batman?
Yeah, is it about Batman? Is it about Jay Gatsby? Is there
Yeah.
anything more kind of a quintessential to the American storytelling landscape than like the man with of two sides? Than the man who lives two different lives in some capacity? I mean,
Mhm,
it's everywhere now that when you really start to think about it.
mhm.
Whether it's Batman or whether it's, these characters we just mentioned, or even oh my god, I was just drawing a blank. Like, think about the man who shot Liberty Valance. That that movie's about John Wayne, and John Wayne is or and um Jimmy Stewart being the hero and the guy who went out west and tamed the West and shot the bad guy and became a senator. And then the very end of it, you find out that's all a lie, and John Wayne was the guy that shot him the whole time. There's even a line about it in Mad Men about it, where I think Pete even says, he's like, "It was a good movie, but you know what? John Wayne shot him in the end." It's like, well, thanks for ruining it, but this quintessential idea of the American man reinventing himself multiple times in order to fulfill a destiny or run from something. It's very prevalent, and especially in this episode, you really see it from Don and Tony.
Mhm. Or to fit in or to cover up some, lacking.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever whatever the main thing driving that character is that causes them to acquire this other persona. That's
Mhm.
it's very unique. I don't granted, I don't know that much about like European literature. I'm not reading any of that, but it's all over American culture. It's all over American um creations.
Yeah. Well, I think, you could even make a case that they're talking about, like, our shadow self, like, our deepest, most needs and wants and desires, which is a big reason why we love these shows, because it's like, I would love to pull over and, like, beat the shit out of the guy that cut me off last week, or, like, you know, just
Yeah.
any girl that looks my way, but it's
Yeah.
like, that's
Or
not gonna lead to a very happy, productive life, so it's like, "Alright, well, we'll just, like, let our shadow self run wild through pretending we're these characters while we watch the show."
That's a really good point. I remember David Chase talking about the ending of The Sopranos, and he specifically talked about why it didn't, no matter what you think of the ending and what happened to Tony, why it didn't end with Tony being like shot on camera. And that
Mhm,
early on, he never wanted that because he mentioned about how And for years and years and years, the public has watched Tony and lived vicariously through him, lived vicariously through his crimes and cheered them on. And and having him gunned down on screen like that in a way was absolving the audience from cheering on all the awful things that he did. Because from the audience point of view, it's like, well, some bad man has to pay for all the bad things he did. And that would be too easy. It would be too lowbrow, and it would be giving them what they wanted. And which I thought was a really interesting way to look at that. That
Mm.
you won't, you talk about these characters being the shadow versions of people and of humanity. And as you mentioned, following through on these acts and these impulses leads to not good things. But when we're seeing that played out on screen, it's just it. I had something, then I lost it. I had something, then I lost it. Damn it. Um, Let me check my
Your
notes.
shadow
Anything else?
self.
Yeah, my shadow self hopped in and he was like, "I don't like you talking about me this way. I thought we were gonna keep it on the down low." Anything else stand out about these? I do love the other thing I liked in this episode with The Sopranos, especially, was AJ and just how like stupid and dumb he is and awful when he's trying to help his mom because she's feeling sick and he makes toast and eggs and it's just like this burnt lump of crap food. And then he did that thing that all of us did. I remember doing it as a kid, where it's like you ask your mom, like, "Hey, can I go over to Jason's and play video games for like an hour?" And it's like 7 o'clock on a Saturday, and you have no intention on coming home that night. Like none. You have no intention on doing. You're never gonna stay for just an hour. You know you're gonna go over and not come back, but you might not get a yes out of mom at that moment. But if you just go and 2 hours later ask for it, you'll probably get the yes. I like that AJ did that.
Yeah. Yeah. We can relate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, anything else stand out to you in this episode? That's pretty much my notes.
Yeah, I I don't know how many kinda, like, insights I take from Tony, but I do tend to take insights from Don because I feel like whoever wrote him, like, got their fucking PhD in how to, like, navigate corporate America and, like, you
Oh
know,
yeah, yeah.
say nothing while wowing everyone.
Well, it goes back to that Saturday Night Live clip that we love so much when he hosts. It's like, here's how to be Don Draper: blow everyone away every time you say anything.
Disappear for weeks at a time.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and I picked up on when Ken was telling everyone, like, he got published in the Atlantic, everyone kinda, like, through their teeth was like, "Oh, great job, man." But Don was, like, genuinely happy for him and was like, "Congratulations, that's a huge accomplishment, like, good for you." Like,
yeah,
genuinely. Like, you could tell, like, if I just saw it, I'd be like, "Oh, that's nice." But compared to everyone else's, like, gritted teeth,
yeah,
congratulations, holy fuck, like, Dawn is like an angel.
yeah. And just like you said, he navigates it really well. No one
Yeah,
else hides it well at all. Like how angry they are that their contemporary accomplished anything.
yeah,
And I think that's a great topic, not just for Mad Men, but for the show and for a show is just, navigating corporate America and how the knives come out the second you show any initiative or do anything that's like good or moves the meter. The medium of the bell curve doesn't like that at all. Do not show that you exist down here at the end of the bell curve in any way whatsoever. Or that middle of the bell curve is not going to be happy for you.
yeah. I think another way to view these 2 shows together is, the horrors of incredible organization, i.e., the corporate world, and then the arguably worse horrors of the chaos of the mob organized world. And just comparing and contrasting those, you're like, "Oh, this fucking corporate world, like, I can't do this for one more second, I'm out of here." And you're like, "Okay, the opposite of that is the mob world, which is even worse, and you can get, like, murdered.
Yeah. Yeah, where at least in the mob world, at least in the corporate world, you can get whacked, but you're not dead. To kinda touch on what you just mentioned, I used to kinda joke around and I used not really, but I used to think like, I'd be a good mobster just because I wouldn't forget anything, and I think I could navigate things real well, and I don't know, I just think I could do it until I watched, the Sopranos prequel movie, and if you've seen it, right? Where
No.
okay, whatever,
Has
whatever,
anyone
but
seen it?
it's not great. It's not good. But, the main character, the spoiler alert for you, but whatever. The main character who's Chris's father, we find out how he dies and what happened to him. And he gets whacked, and we find out that Uncle Junior put the hit out on him. And the only reason he put the hit out on him is because Junior makes a fool of himself like 3 or 4 times throughout the movie, and every time Dicky Moltisanti is just all he does is just laugh at him. That's it. Like the guy falls down, go flight of stairs, he makes fun of him. Guy can't get it up with his girlfriend, he makes fun of him. And at the end of it, he gets whacked just because Dickie reacted naturally to you being a buffoon. And then I realized that's how I would have gotten whacked. That I would have said one joke a la Ralph Cifaretto and Jenny Sacks fat ass, or I've done something like Dicky Moltisanti did, and then somebody would have just been like, "I'm gonna kill that motherfucker tonight," and that would have been the end of me, and I never would have seen it coming. I would just been sitting there in my car one night and just like, "Oh yeah, you think that sure looked funny on me?" Boom, and that would have been it. That's how the story ends.
You'd have been the guy in the made man in the bar in Goodfellas that Joe Pesci and De Niro and Leota killed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
"You think
I,
it's
I
funny,
but
motherfucker?"
but not even I don't even think it would have been anything even that consequential that I said. Just like Dicky Moltisanti, I would have just been like at the wrong time, and someone would have been like, "That piece of shit," and then that would have been it.
That's it. Dude, there's a sketch right there as well.
Yeah,
Why'd you whack him? Fucking laughed at I tripped on the curb, you fucking laughed at me.
that was pretty much why he gets whacked. Like the Uncle Junior slips coming down a set of stairs in the rain, and Dicky laughs at him, and then that's it. That's it. That was like the nail in the coffin. And when I
That's
saw that, I was like, "Oh, that's how Gangster Michael would have died." I get it.
I don't I don't I don't think it would have taken, that long for Gangster Michael to
No,
get blacked
no,
from that either.
no, no. Just like the guys in season 2, the 2 schlubs who are underneath Christopher, who attack him, who they don't
Yeah.
make it that long, just like Jackie Jr. in season 3. No, I wouldn't have made it past like 22 years of age inside the mob world
And I think that,
unless
that
my dad was Tony. Like that would have been the only thing that would have saved me if unless I was completely protected.
and then you would have just turned into Joe Pesci.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Not the mob boss, the actual actor
Just
himself.
just Joe Pesci.
It's Joe Pesci.
There's there's wor there's worse things to be.
And I think that's another reason why you and I connected so quickly because, like, that's I don't wanna, like, hurt anyone, but if someone, like, trips and falls in front of me and, like, they're fine, but it's, like, funny, like, that's the funniest thing in the world, or if you throw a tennis ball and it, like, hits
Yeah.
your brother in
Yeah,
in the nuts, like, that's
and
hilarious.
the closer you are to that person, the funnier it is. It's just a universal law of nature.
It's just fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Dude, when
Yeah.
something hilarious happens to me, like I slip and fall or do something stupid and no one is there to see and laugh at it, I'm like, "What a jip. Why would that even happen?" Like,
It's all for nothing.
come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Or at the very least, you're like, "Boy, I hope a security camera got that, and someone's gonna post it on Instagram later."
Yeah.
So at least it gets something. What was the point?
Get some enjoyment out of my pain.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm scrolling through Instagram later and I see myself, like, fall into the koi pond like Michael Scott, like, "Oh, finally."
Yeah. Um, alright, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think the people in well, who do you think fears this outcome more? People in Sopranos getting whacked or people in Mad Men getting fired or, publicly humiliated?
Ooh, man. Because I, in a way, I think it's Mad Men getting fired
You
and
think they
losing their
fear that
position.
more?
Yeah,
I think so too.
because take a look at Lane and how he reacts to getting
Yeah.
fired. Look at the lengths they all go to preserve their spots, to like you said, keep up with the Joneses in this world. Um, oh, who's the account guy who's chubby who looks like Orson Welles? Like
Oh, yeah.
he doesn't get brought with them to the new company in season 4, and then they catch up with him a few years later, and they're
Mhm.
talking about how he's working at A&P, and they're like, "Wait, what marketing firm is that?" They're like, "No, the gas station A&P." And and his life is just completely crumbled.
Yeah.
Where over on The Sopranos, they all got into this knowing that was a possibility, and especially made guys like Ralph comes to mind, Richie, those guys don't act like they're worried about getting whacked.
Mhm.
There's nothing in their everyday behavior that makes you think they are acting like there's a sword of Damocles hanging over their head, where Tony does and addresses it a lot. Um, but they don't act like they're afraid to lose their spot. Over on Mad Men, everyone's deathly afraid to lose their spot
Mhm.
and to lose the clout that comes with it too.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost strikes me as like a Viking-esque, preferred, like, honorable death, like, they die with their sword in their hand,
Yeah,
whereas Mad Men, you're for all intents and purposes killed because you're no longer able to earn, which is a saying I love from The Sopranos, and it's you're just kinda banished to the wasteland of you can't you're no longer gonna be a big hotshot anymore.
yeah, whatever is outside the windows of that office in New York is just, like you said, the wasteland. It is the unprotected Wild West. You are a member of our community here, but then once you're cast out, it's done.
Yeah. And that to me, I mean, even from my perspective, that's a fate worse than death. Like if you buy into this perspective and mentality, that is truly a fate worse than death.
Yeah, if you believe there's no next chapter for you, or there's no way to redeem yourself, and ultimately this is just redeeming yourself from losing a corporate job.
Mhm.
Like, that's what we're talking about here. This is you, you get fired and go somewhere else and work.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if memory serves, we had Lane, we had Duck, we had the Orson Welles looking guy whose name I can't remember either. The only and we had Joel Murray also,
Yeah,
like those 4 guys never fucking came back. The only person that came back was Don.
yeah,
Don
yeah.
Don pulled it off.
And he pulls it off twice.
Yeah.
He leaves and he just leaves and comes back.
But
But
no,
also, well,
remember when,
you're
they
right.
were trying to out him, right? Like,
That's
they were
right.
like,
That's
"No,
right. They
no."
fire him
Yeah.
for being the drunk and ruining the Hershey's thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wow. You're right. That's
He's
the
the one
closest
that
we get
never came back.
to full redemption.
Yeah.
Interesting point. Yeah, but man, um, I'm now thinking about
Truly, he's
Roger.
Jesus. Don is Jesus. He fucking came back from death.
He wrote, hold on a second. Is Don getting fired and coming back from death like Tony getting shot and coming back from death in his coma?
Oh, man.
Rips bong load. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Um, anything else?
Um, there was another transition from, uh, Don leaving his soul-crushing lunch with Adam at that diner that's been in, like, every movie, about this era ever, and I think they went to that diner in Training Day as well.
Yeah, that's, like, just the diner in LA, the
Yeah,
old-fashioned diner.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
Don
like how the it's like how the diner from Pulp Fiction shows up in so many things.
Yeah, yeah.
You notice
I
that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've driven past it a ton of times when I lived in LA. I always notice, and it I feel vindicated when I see this in Mad Men, like the transition from just an absolute free for all war zone that Don and Tony experience, and then just like transition violently to family life where the wife is like, "The goddamn kids, like, are shitting their pants," and you're just like, "Whoa!" Like, I
Yeah.
just saw, like, my buddies die face down in the muck, and you're, like, want me to, like, make a big deal about this nothing?
Yeah, yeah. The there's a scene in I think it's season 2 when they're doing they're getting ready for the American Airlines pitch,
Mhm,
and they're in the office every weekend for, like, 3 straight weeks, and they go to do the pitch, and the head of marketing at American Airlines got fired that morning, so it's all for nothing.
mm.
And Don gets home that night, and Betty's like, "These kids have been a pain in the butt all day today." And he's like, "You want me to bring home what I just went through? No, you don't. You'll end up going through that wall, like you said. Like you just came home from a war zone, and now I got to hear about like how the 3-year-old wet his pants. Change his pants and shut up."
Yeah, yeah.
And and to piggyback on that, I love when it's like in season 5 when uh Tony's sister Janice has her kid and has her baby with Bobby, and they're talking about going to some PTA meeting or something and telling Tony about their schedule. And Bobby goes, "You remember how it was when you had little ones, don't you, Tony?" He's like, "No, I don't. I didn't do any of this crap." So he at least left it to Carmela, and well, he was busy. He was busy hanging out at the strip club with his buddies. Which, by
Yeah,
the way, is my other favorite thing about The Sopranos when the constant running joke of Tony talking about how hard he works when he's just hanging out with his buddies all day. He doesn't do any collections himself. Oftentimes he'll just go to the mall and like read a paper and almost fall asleep. Like this guy doesn't do anything. Once every year he's got to be called upon to whack somebody. But that's, that's the price you're paying.
yeah.
So
Um, I have, maybe not in this episode specifically, but I have noticed, um, there's more violence, like physical violence in Sopranos. There's more like corporate violence in Mad Men,
emotional violence.
emotional violence, just, ruining someone's life or reputation. There's no physical contact like whatsoever in Mad Men. And in Sopranos, every dude's like fucking making out with the other dude. Like it's the manliest show, and it's like so there's like so much intimacy among like these masculine men. They like kiss each other on the cheeks, they like hug each other like
Yeah.
someone died. Like I can't think of Don hugging one person outside of like, some random bar woman.
There's the handshake, but that's pretty much
Excellent.
it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any moment that, like, him and Roger embraced, like, physically.
Yeah, I can't think of one.
No, no,
Yeah,
you mentioned last week one of your favorite scenes from, the Christmas episode where they're walking down the hall,
yeah. Dude,
and he's
that
like,
popped in my
"Mm."
head too. I was like, that was the closest they got.
Yeah, yeah, "Did you enjoy the Fiora's birthday?" Like, they don't embrace there.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
closest that they get. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good point. And you're right, meanwhile, over on The Sopranos, every dude is just, like, kissing each other 3 times a day.
Yeah, telling them how much they love each other.
Yeah, at least
Yeah.
At least on Mad Men, they're not operating under the facade that they're family and that they love each other. Where over on The Sopranos, like you know, Paulie kisses Tony's ass, and they talk about loving each other. But Paulie's scheming to have to leave the family and have Tony whacked like all of season 4.
Mhm.
None of this stuff. The minute you cost anybody any money on The Sopranos, that's when they don't care about you anymore.
Mhm.
And that's where you lose your spot.
Mhm.
And yeah, so one side's all about, oh, we're family lovey dovey, and there's none of it. And over in
Mhm.
corporate America, it's like you said, there's that line. There's a lot of intimacy between the characters, but it's never really broken. I
Yeah.
mean, hell, the one time in the suitcase when at the end of the episode when like Don touches Peggy's hand, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like in just that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's a really
and
good point.
this just popped in my head. I would argue that, like, the closest thing we get to intimacy, in Mad Men is when people drink a strong beverage.
Yeah,
Like I wonder if we went back and, like, just checked out the framing and, like, the angle of the shot, if the Don drinking shot was shot the same way as, like, the Tony embracing Christopher
yeah,
shot.
yeah.
That's the closest they get to intimacy.
To piggyback on that, the scene in The Shining where Jack walks into the bar and the devil's there and he pours him a drink. And he's like,
Mm,
"Here's the 4 long months on the wagon." And like that embrace that Jack does with that glass and that look on his face is so like in love, and you can just like feel it in him. He's just like it encompasses him just this one drink. So it's interesting you mentioned that. Yeah, like that's
yeah.
the only intimacy in that entire movie either is between Jack and his booze. But yeah,
Yeah,
how
and
that's
and
framed.
and
Oh, go ahead.
Sopranos, like, they certainly drink, but it's not like a magical thing, right? It's not like
Oh,
the magic moment.
yeah, and let's how many other how many other posters, how many other pieces of content puts, attractive women and men and sexual objects on their packaging. And Mad Men just has the liquor on it.
Dude, good call. Holy shit.
Like that's it's front and center. Like
Yeah.
that's what it is.
The most pornographic image in Mad Men,
Yeah, yeah,
a
the most
full beverage.
yeah. Speaking of which, I'm almost done with my Pellegrino. Yeah, really good observation. I like that.
Thanks, thanks.
Yeah, we should take a look at that. Like go back and see how like sex scenes are shot,
Mhm.
or some of the more actual like genuine embrace moments in The Sopranos, and compare that to just you know how oftentimes they'll do an up close shot of the glass and the ice goes in, and they'll do the pour on Mad Men. Like there's a lot that goes into just that. On The Sopranos, they don't do that. Like here's your glass of wine. Somebody's got a beer. Like
Yeah.
that's never something that's emphasized.
It's not like the focal point.
No,
Yeah.
no. It's like the entire scene is often built ar the entire frame of the scene, the structure of it is almost built around the drink cart in the middle of, like, meetings. And how
Mhm.
often is it, like, pouring whether in Don's office or whether they're having, like, a powwow somewhere, how often is that literally at the physical center of the shot, and everybody is placed around that? I bet that's a lot. I bet that happens
Yeah.
a ton.
Well, there's a PhD thesis in there somewhere.
Well, I don't know if we have time for that, but we'll just keep cranking out episodes of this, and we'll get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, that sounds like more fun.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not writing anything that's that boring. All right, man. Does that do it for us this week?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So tune in next week for episode 6. I off the top of my head, I can't tell you what each of the titles are. But episode 6 next week. Chris, good job by you, buddy. Thanks so much, and thank you for tuning in. Hit the like and subscribe button so we can keep doing this and get some traffic and get some stuff going. So thanks so
Hell
much,
yeah.
guys, for tuning in. Have a great day.
Alright. Good job by you.
Good job by you, buddy.